Okay, so the draft is today, and what I wanted to do was just talk about some of my favorite and least favorite Browns draft memories. All right, so we're going to talk about four of these things overall, and let's just jump into it. So, one of the best Browns memories in the last few years when it comes to the draft has been Myles Garrett. Browns had the number one overall pick. There was a player there that obviously needed to go number one overall. And you know what the Browns did? They just took him. And it worked out. I mean, look, it sounds so simple, but how many times does it not happen for us, right? We get the third pick in 2012, and we just know Trent Richardson. He's going to hit. He don't hit at all. We get rid of him within a year, right? Like, this has happened so many. Courtney Brown, all these times Browns had the number one overall pick, and it stunk. Myles Garrett is the one dude who was the number one overall pick and met expectations. It's a great memory that none of these guys give us. By the way, if you want to hear me talk more draft before I get into the rest of this video, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you could be tuned in for my live stream tomorrow on this channel for day 2 of the draft when the Browns actually have a pick. Also, you could catch me on AFC North Talk today, live reacting to the draft with Sonny, Ace, and Tony, if that's interesting to you. But again, Myles Garrett being one of the best memories in recent draft history, simply because he was the number one overall pick and he panned out. And let's not forget, look, it was not a hard choice to take Myles Garrett. It really wasn't. But there are some really smart people like John Gruden and Booger McFarland that tried to make you do the wrong thing, right? Booger McFarland thought Derek Barnett was a better prospect than Myles Garrett, which he should be fired and banned from talking football on the defensive line. I respect that Booger McFarland played in the NFL. He probably knows more about this than me, but by the time you let that opinion out that Myles Garrett is a worse prospect than Derek Barnett, you shouldn't be on TV no more, bro. Like, you obviously let something get out the way. If a dude like me in the chair can tell you that Myles Garrett is clearly better than Derek Barnett, why is it that you're saying this when you have NFL experience? Like, this is one of those things where you had to be hating to be wrong at that level. Another dude that had to be hating to be wrong at that level was John Gruden. People forget this. John Gruden would not shut up about how the Browns should have drafted Jamal Adams. Could you imagine Browns took a safety, number one overall, and it's Jamal Adams? Like, he ain't bad, but he ain't that good. Like, he's been traded a couple times. People don't want to take his contract over Myles Garrett. Now, what was his reasoning? He thought Myles Garrett was lazy. He thought Myles Garrett wasn't a hustler. And he thought Myles Garrett wasn't a leader. All I know is that Jamal Adams is made fun of for his leadership across the NFL. People kind of clown Jamal Adams. Myles Garrett showed up at the press conference talking about the defense need to be better with no shirt on. And you know what the defense did that day? Set the single game sack record. Who's the leader? Who's the leader? Who's the leader that you want to have? The dude who talks about being a leader, or the dude who shows up and says we need to make this right with no shirt on for no reason, and then all of a sudden you break a sack record that same week? I'm gonna go with Myles Garrett. So that, again, draft talk can get so all-time stupid. This was one of them. The negative context, the negative discourse, not like it was a lot, but the negative discourse surrounding Myles Garrett and the Cleveland Browns was just ridiculous. People wanted Myles Garrett to request a trade to like the Dallas Cowboys. I'm just happy that the Browns in 2017 got Myles Garrett, took Myles Garrett, and did what they were supposed to. Now, one of my least favorite memories or my biggest regrets in the draft that kind of is related to that is in 2017, man, that draft should have been so much better than what it was. The Browns had 3 picks. They had the 12th, and they had traded up for what was the 29th pick right before Pittsburgh. And look, they ended up with Jabril Peppers, who's a solid player. They ended up with David Njoku, who's a solid player. I'm not complaining about having either of those two guys. But when I tell you the 2 players that they could have drafted in that spot, makes you question. Now, one of these guys, it doesn't matter as much because, like, there's questions on if he would still be on your team if you took him in 2017, but he's on your team now, and that's Deshaun Watson. You could have had him at 12. But the other guy, I mean, it's just a miss, right? You took Jabril Peppers, who's not on the team anymore. You traded him. Again, Jabril's a solid player, but he's not a great player. Well, no, Jabril was at 12. You took David Njoku, who's a good player, but he's not a superstar player, and you could have had TJ Watt. Now, I know, right? Who could have saw it coming, all this? Who would take two defensive edges in the same draft when you just took somebody number one overall? Remember, this Browns team stunk coming into this, right? Like, they stunk, and they weren't trying to be good in 2017 or 2018. They stunk. And they weren't good enough to not take a player at a position, because honestly, all the player positions were needs, and you could have took multiple players at a position. You wouldn't have felt the need for that team. So you could have absolutely took TJ Watt there. And could you imagine if TJ Watt and Myles Garrett were on the same defense? That would be one expensive ass defense, but boy, would it be really good. And that could have happened. Came this close to happening. Browns traded up right before Pittsburgh. Could have made it happen. Went with David Njoku instead. The rest is history. Look, it's not one of those awful ones that you kick yourself about forever, but it's also not very good that you missed on that. But, it's just kind of a fun thing to look back to. It's one of those what if moments, man. What if the Browns would have drafted TJ Watt there at that spot? How much of that would have changed things? And, it'd just been worth it to get him out of Pittsburgh, quite frankly, right? Let's talk about my second favorite thing, my other favorite thing in the last few years of the draft, and that is the last 4 years of second-round picks plus Joe Bitonio. In 2018 and from 2021, the Browns' second-round picks have been better than their first. Well, not better, but have been as good as first-round picks as far as prospect-wise, right? Some of these guys didn't pan out, but they were definitely first-round prospects. You go back to 2018, Nick Chubb, home run. Hit a home run there. Got the best running back in that draft, in a draft loaded with running backs. 2019, Greedy Williams didn't pan out to the point that you wanted it to, but still a very good player. 2020, Grant Delpit. That could work out. The book's still out on that one. 2021 JOK, we know that's going to be good. And then Joe Bitonio, right? The Browns, I would love to look at the history of this. All them damn first-round picks the Cleveland Browns that had over their years, and I bet you that the second-round picks that we have had accumulated since expansion, much better. Much, 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 much better. The Browns have fared in the second round versus the first round. And this last 4 years is an example of that. Just being patient, taking the best player available, and you get the best player available. Sometimes you got to be a little aggressive, get a JOK. That's fine. That's fine. But the last 4 years in the Browns' second round in general, it's a good place to be in. And, hey, get comfortable, man, because we ain't going to have no first-round picks anytime soon. Not for this year, next year, or the year after. So, dig in, man. We ain't got nothing to do on Thursdays for a while, Browns fans. All right. And my least favorite thing from the draft over the last few years that the Browns have done was 2014. Some of you guys have heard me talk about it before, but if you've never heard me complain about the 2014 draft, let me set this up for you guys. The 2014 draft in the NFL is one of the most loaded NFL drafts in history. The amount of players who went in the Pro Bowl that were drafted in that first round actually outnumbered the players that weren't in the Pro Bowl. If you don't believe me, this is the first round of that year's draft. If you are highlighted, that means you are a Pro Bowler. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 18 Pro Bowlers out of 32 picks. That means you had to try to pick a bum if you were going to pick a bum. And by the way, some of these dudes who didn't make the Pro Bowl were still very good players for at least a year or two, right? Kelvin Benjamin had a couple of good years. Brandon Cooks was in this draft. Calvin Pryor was never good ever. But, there were some good players within it. Sammy Watkins in there. And the Browns in that year, where it was more difficult to not pick a Pro Bowler than it was to pick a Pro Bowler, picked not only not Pro Bowlers, but two of the worst players in this entire draft, and that was Johnny Manziel and Justin Gilbert. I cannot say enough how awful this draft was, considering the fact that this draft was loaded at every position except for the ones that the Browns selected, right? They took a quarterback and a cornerback in a draft where look at these wide receivers. Look at these defensive tackles. Odell Beckham went 12th. 12th in that draft. Aaron Donald went 13th. Like crazy. Zach Martin went 16th in that draft. Like this is stuff that does not happen. DeMarcus Lawrence, 34. Derek Carr, if you wanted a quarterback, this is what makes it inexcusable. Derek Carr, right there, 36. You could have taken Derek Carr, but you wanted Johnny Manziel. Hell, you could have took Teddy Bridgewater and it would have worked out better. But you took the dude who had the shortest career in his entire draft. What makes it worse, not only were these players bad, they played 2 seasons in the NFL. Justin Gilbert played 2 seasons in the NFL before he was out of here. Johnny Manziel, who played 2 seasons in the NFL before he was out of here. Do you know in the modern NFL how bad you have to be, how much of a headache you have to be to get released from your rookie contract in your second year? I'm asking this question genuinely. Like, I don't think people understand this. When you draft somebody in the first round, they're going to be on the team for 4 years, right? Like, that's a commitment. And if you release somebody before that, and they a first round pick, they must have been booty, dog. Like, you are paying a price to cut them. And that's how bad Johnny Manziel and Justin Gilbert were. Johnny Manziel and Justin Gilbert especially, because he was a top 10 pick. You know how much it cost the Browns to release Justin Gilbert? And then Justin Gilbert went to Pittsburgh and still couldn't stick on a roster. You know how bad Justin Gilbert was? Like, Justin Gilbert is the worst pick in this entire draft. And Johnny Manziel went in the first round ahead of Derek Carr and Teddy Bridgewater. Like, that's how bad of a pick Justin Gilbert was, because he was awful. Kyle Fuller was in this draft. Kyle Fuller was actually good for a certain period of time in the NFL, right? Clinton Dix was decent for a couple of years, right? Like, you picked the worst dude. Jason Verrett was in this draft. Like, you could add Jason Verrett. Like, all of these things the Browns just did wrong in 2014. And then what makes it even weirder, they got Joe Batonio in the second round, so they knew that they could do something right. They just decided to do everything wrong. The Justin Gilbert pick is especially egregious because the Browns had the 4th pick that year. They could have taken Sammy Watkins. They could have taken Khalil Mack. They could have had all of these other players. But instead they traded back to 8th and took a dude that they never visited, right? Remember, Justin Gilbert, they never visited Justin Gilbert. They never did any research on Justin Gilbert. They just liked Justin Gilbert's tape and took him. And look, I'm all for just trusting your tape, but you also have to figure out what kind of person this dude is. You're going to draft him. If you never interviewed him, you never brought him into your campus, you never went to his campus, you never did any research on this dude, then you're kind of rolling the dice. And what happened with Justin Gilbert was a dude who did not show up for work on time, ever. Like, he did not wake up in the morning. Said he was like, he needed a stronger alarm clock to Mary Kay, like publicly. And that got him out the NFL. Could not wake up to get to work on time. 8th overall pick. You took Justin Gilbert, who got kicked out the NFL before his 3rd year, ahead of Aaron Donald. You traded back for that when you could have took Khalil Mack. Just one of the worst picks in NFL history. And then the Johnny Manziel one is inexcusable because Derek Carr was in that draft. You could have just taken Derek Carr. But no, you had to get Johnny football because everybody was drinking that Johnny juice. So this is a trip down memory lane. We've had some good moments in the last few years. We had some bad moments in the last few years. What will the 2021 draft be? Let me know in the comment section below. But again, guys, thank you for watching. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.